Well, the Kraken lost again, and so did the Habs and Coyotes, so they don't even make up ground in the first picks odds race. And Matty Beniers also hasn't signed with the team yet, so we haven't got to see him play for the Kraken either. But at least the Mariners are 2-0, so that's nice. What's cracking, everybody, and welcome back to Kraken R&R, where, yes, the Kraken do end up losing to the Calgary Flames 4-1 in Seattle. Now, they will have another chance to play the Flames and potentially get redemption or just beat the Flames for the first time in general in Calgary in 2 days on Tuesday. Which, while we're on the subject of it, that's a game that I will be streaming during, so feel free to come join for that one. 6 p.m. Pacific time Tuesday evening. Again, that being the 12th. Now, before we get to the game, knowing that there will be questions about it, especially considering I mentioned at the start of the video, the fact that Matty Beniers hasn't signed for the Kraken yet isn't any reason to be concerned. He will play for the Kraken at some point in time, it just won't be right away. I still do think he'll probably play at least at some point in these last few games of the season, now with 10 left, but we just don't know exactly when that's going to happen. He could sign any day now, or he could decide to take a little bit of a break and just join the team next season. Of course, with that being said, there is pretty big incentive for him to sign and then play for the Kraken, at least for a couple of games here at the end of the season, to knock 1 year off of his ELC or entry-level contract. Now, that entry-level contract with his age will be a 3-year contract when he signs it, so if he were to sign it this season, that would leave 2 full seasons that he would have on that entry-level contract before he can sign his first big one in the NHL. That does leave the potential option that the Kraken could just wait until next year to have him sign that contract so they get 3 full years of him on a rookie deal, but that's not really how business tends to get done in the NHL. And with the Kraken having a reputation, especially Ron Francis, of respecting players and what's best for the players, I don't think that they're gonna min-max him and try to get that extra season of not large contract out of it. It also could upset Beniers, which then could be worse for the team in the long run. But the main point that I wanted to make here was, especially for newer fans, that there isn't any reason to be worried that just because some of Beniers' teammates like Owen Power and Kent Johnson have already signed their contracts and did so right after having lost in the college playoffs, doesn't mean that we should be worried about Beniers not having signed his just yet. It will happen and he will be a Kraken. It's just a matter of when he decides to make that decision. Now, as for this game against the Flames, which I suppose we do have to get around to talking about at some point, the Kraken come into it with basically the same lineup that we've seen now for a few games. Grubauer gets another start and goal after his shutout performance against Chicago. And Mccann's still curiously on the 4th line. Not sure if that has to do with injury or the Kraken just trying out different lines, but it doesn't really make a lot of sense that he's down there, even with the Kraken running largely similar play times for all 4 lines. He really should be a first or second liner, and by the start of next season, I would fully expect him to be there. I guess it really doesn't matter that much at this point in the season. They're just trying out different things, and why not? Still a little bit curious to see him on the 4th line with Geeky and Kuhlman. That having been said, that line worked out perfectly fine in this game, and Mccann still got 17 minutes of ice time, so yeah, I guess there you go. Meanwhile, on the other side of the ice, it's worth mentioning with the Flames lineup, this was set to be the first time that the Kraken got to see one of their old teammates who spent significant time with the team playing against them for the opposing team, and especially the first time in Seattle. That, of course, would have been Calle Jarnkrok. Unfortunately, he isn't back in the Flames lineup, now having missed a few games with what I think was an illness. I haven't seen him on an injury list. Either way, he isn't back in the Flames lineup for this game. Hopefully he can get back for the one in Calgary. And I suppose if Jarnkrok isn't back by Tuesday to play against the Kraken in that game, the very next day, as a part of another road back-to-back in the 2nd week in a row, the Kraken will be going to Winnipeg, where they'll get to face Mason Appleton. So we'll get to see an old Kraken one way or another in this next week. And I suppose at the end of the week, there will also be Nathan Bastian's return to Seattle, coming back with the Devils, who they let go via waivers, and he went back to the team he was drafted from. But again, he didn't spend nearly as long with the Kraken as either Appleton or Jarnkrok did. Finally, getting into the game, the Kraken actually come out and have a pretty good first period. A lot of energy right out of the gates, especially considering the team they were up against being obviously the best team in the division, while the Kraken are, well, let's just say on the other end of that. Of course, I probably should say that they had a good first period outside of the scoreboard, but we'll get there. At least right out to start the game, the Kraken get a good push off on the Flames' end of the ice and get the first few chances off on net. Unfortunately, just under 4 minutes into the game, it's the Flames against the flow of play coming back down the other way, and a Hanifin shot finds its way into the back of the net past Grubauer. Hanifin's shot did end up getting deflected on its way to the net, which makes it go over Grubauer's glove and into the top corner of the net. It's Kuhlman, who had a fair amount of space to get that deflection off, that is able to put that into the back of the net to give the Flames that early lead. Now, I do think it's worth mentioning here that after the game, Hackstall, who, let's just say, hasn't been shy to point out when Grubauer could have played better, did say that these first 2 goals that the Flames end up scoring in this first period, because yes, the Flames do end up scoring another one before the first period ends, both of them were not so much to do with the last line of defense, as he put it, in Grubauer, and had more to do with the irresponsible defensive setup in front of him. And I can kind of see his point here, where the shot is a clean one for Hanifin to get off, and then the tip comes from Kuhlman, who finds a pretty wide open pocket right in the slot to get his stick on that shot and put it in over Grubauer. It's not quite as obvious of bad defense as, say, an odd man rush or a completely free breakaway like we've seen the Kraken give up all sorts of times during the course of this season, especially in the first half of it, that got Grubauer kind of put in the doghouse on a number of occasions. However, it still is pretty soft defense that you'd like to see a team like the Kraken get cleaned up, especially considering the amount of defensive depth that they do have. The good news, though, is that while the Kraken are now down early in a 1-0 hole, which we have seen a number of times throughout this season, a trend that we've seen the Kraken start really over these last couple of months continues here, and that is of them pushing to try to respond quickly after giving up goals. And that's exactly what they're able to do here, pushing into the offensive zone off the faceoff, and eventually it's Mccann in the offensive end, pushing the puck down along the boards around the corner behind the net, where Geeky shovels a backhand pass out front to Kuhlman, who has a wide open shot, and he buries it into the back of the net on the far side of Markstrom to get the Kraken on the board and tie this game up at 1. Just over a minute after the Flames took that 1-0 lead. So there you go, that fourth line that includes the Kraken leading goal scorer works out for the Kraken getting onto the board 5 minutes into the game. Exactly 5 minutes into the game, and in large part thanks to the absolute gorgeous pass from Geeky from behind the net out to Kuhlman, who again gets a very nice shot off. And from there, again, really for the rest of this first period, the Kraken play the Flames really well, playing with a lot of energy and creating a number of chances in front of the Flames' net. Right after this game tying goal, Donato is one of a few Kraken who have near misses right out in front of the net, as there's crossing passes trying to find those tip-ins past Markstrom that the Kraken just aren't quite able to connect on. Now, I should point out that the Flames do get their chances as well back at the other end of the ice. Grubauer comes up with a couple of pretty good saves, one in particular that came on a very good look for Backlund, who was wide open in the slot when he got the shot off, coming off of a pass that came from next to the net. So Grubauer able to get adjusted and get in front of that shot before it can get past him. Of course, not to be outdone by Grubauer, back at the other end of the ice, Markstrom just continues his outstanding season for the Flames, bouncing back from a pretty underwhelming season last year. So for those wondering if Grubauer can bounce back next year, all you have to do is look at what Markstrom's been able to do to point out that, yes, goaltenders can do that 180 from one season to another. For Markstrom, it's been an incredible season once again. Honestly, if it wasn't for Igor Shesterkin and what he's been able to do with the Rangers, I'd say Markstrom had a chance at the Vezina. It's not really going to happen with Shesterkin's season, but it has been that good for Markstrom and the Flames. Anyway, again, he shows part of why he's had such a good season for the Flames, right back down at the other end of the ice, where he absolutely robs Cole Lind on a beautiful crossing pass from Yanni Gourde. Once again, those two connecting on a play that should have ended up in the back of the net, but Markstrom reads it perfectly and is able to get across in time to make the save on the Lind shot. I mean, to be honest, Markstrom reads this play so well from Gourde to Lind that the save itself on the Lind shot really doesn't even look all that impressive, because of the positioning that Markstrom's able to get from how he read the play in the first place. Not as flashy of a save, but still very impressive nonetheless. Still though, including this play, the Kraken are really able to build all the momentum in their favor over the last few minutes of this first period, including a number more shots on goal and a couple from Garson Kuhlman just by himself. None of that quite finds the back of the net though, even with all that Kraken momentum, and then finally, in the final seconds of the first period, Alexiak puts the ref's arm up as he's going to go to the box for a tripping call. However, before he even gets to the box, with 15 seconds left in the first period on the delayed penalty, once again it's Hanifin, this time finding Lewis in front of the net, who tips it past Grubauer and into the back of the net to give the Flames the late 2-1 lead. Again, just 15 seconds left in the period. And once again, to Hackstall's point, Trevor Lewis is just kind of allowed to stand in front of the Kraken net and tip this one in past Grubauer with not a lot more Grubauer could have done about it. He has to be defending a potential shot from a tight angle, and that's really a defenseman's job to take care of the man in front of the net, which Borgen does shove him to the ice as he's tipping the puck into the net, but it's too little too late, and it ends up in the back of it anyway. And whether or not it was this late goal in the first period taking all of the wind out of the Kraken's sails and killing that momentum that they had been building, or just the Flames being a better team and realizing that in the intermission, coming out in the second period, at least to start things off, it's all Calgary early on. Getting all the possession time, really not that many shots off on goal, but a lot of shot attempts. And to be fair to the Kraken, I guess a lot of the shot attempts are coming to the outside, though it is clear that at least that offensive energy that we saw in the first period is not there to start the second. Eventually, Seattle does get that turned around and starts to get the better of possession time, getting closer to the middle of the period. But as we get close to that middle of the period, this is where the story of this game becomes less about the players and more the other four guys on the ice with the stripes. Specifically, the two with the orange armbands. Now, at this point, we already had seen one penalty attempted to get called on the Kraken, on Alexiak, who earned it with the trip, but that ended up in the back of the net on the delayed penalty before the power play can start, which negates the power play. Midway through the second here, this time the Flames are going to get the power play, which is frustrating for a couple of reasons. For one, the penalty on Soucy for tripping again that sends him to the box was a pretty soft one. Soucy just kind of taps a guy's skate along the boards who ends up falling into the boards. Really not much of a tripping call there, at least as far as we could see on the TV broadcast and live in person. But even if I did miss something and that maybe was a good call on Soucy, which is definitely possible, the other, maybe even more frustrating part about this is just seconds before this, back at the other end of the ice, Sprong was very clearly interfered with along the boards as he tried to chase a puck into the offensive zone. However, there was no call on that, and then again, right back at the other end of the ice, the soft tripping call on Soucy that sends the Flames to the power play. I suppose the good news here is that the Kraken penalty kill over the last few weeks has been absolutely fantastic and has been creating a number of shorthanded chances and even shorthanded goals. It seems like on almost every penalty kill, they get at least one look down the ice, even if it doesn't turn into a shot. That doesn't necessarily happen on this penalty kill, but still they do a very good job of killing it off and not giving the Flames hardly any chances, right up until the last kind of 30 seconds of the power play, where Grubauer does have to make a couple of saves, and then eventually, right as the power play ends, and I mean literally the millisecond that the power play ends, Soucy doesn't even have time to step out of the box. It's Stone who takes a one-timer, having just missed a one-timer seconds before it, once again from a pass from Hanifin, and it finds the back of the net past Grubauer to give them the 3-1 lead. Technically, this doesn't count as a power play goal, as again, the power play had just ended before the puck enters the net. Sorry, actually, as I go back to look at it, it does look like they retroactively gave this one credit as a power play goal. So that is probably the fair assessment that the Kraken penalty kill does give one up here. And this one really does kind of feel bad because just before that couple of chances for Stone, the second one going in, do happen, Mangiapane got a very good look that Grubauer came up with an absolutely spectacular save on. Unfortunately, it ends up being for nothing as the Flames still do score on that power play. And while the Kraken do get some chances on the power play themselves before the end of this period, in fact, not only do they get a chance on the power play just a few minutes later, but a minute into that power play opportunity, they get a chance to go to 5-on-3. Still though, with even a minute of 5-on-3, they aren't able to find the back of the net. They do get a number of shots off on goal, but shots off on goal don't do anything if they don't get onto the scoreboard at some point. And then right after Calgary successfully kills off those two overlapping power plays for the Kraken get another power play, the third one of the period, and the third one in a very short span. This one is somehow even better than the minute of 5-on-3 they got, getting once again a number of pretty good looks and shots off on goal, moving the puck around pretty well. But again, nothing finds the back of the net, so it's yet another power play for the Kraken that has nothing to show for it, even if it isn't quite as embarrassing as some of the power plays that we've seen over the course of this season. So eventually we do get to the end of the second period with the Flames still leading 3-1. And then the third period is more of the same from the back half of the second, as the refs just can't keep the whistles out of their mouths. First, early on in the third, after just a couple of minutes of 5-on-5 time that would end up proving to be the longest span of 5-on-5 that we would get at all in this third period, it's Soucy once again to the box on yet another pretty bad tripping call. This one may be even worse than the first, as the Flames player kind of just trips over Soucy's feet, which usually that's just incidental contact and probably should have been again here. Either way, Soucy finds himself in the box, the Kraken on another kill. Once again, no shorthanded chances, but they do a very good job, I would say, of killing off this penalty. Then, after that comes to a conclusion, Dunn finds himself in the box for an interference call, which, yeah, I mean, this game was pretty poorly officiated, but Dunn earned this one. Again, a good kill. Not long after that, it's Borg into the box for, honestly, I don't even remember what, but to be honest, it hardly even matters because once again, all this power play is able to do for the Flames is kill off 2 more minutes of game time, which I guess isn't insignificant at this point in the game with a 2-goal lead, but still the Kraken penalty kill has stepped up really for them in this third period. Next, it's the turn of the power play, however, and yeah, the Kraken power play also was not particularly impressive, much like the Flames power play. Now, I will say that this Kraken power play, the first one of the third period, is probably their best one of the game. They spend almost the entire time in the offensive zone and move the puck around pretty effectively and get a number of shots off on goal, so it does pretty much everything outside of scoring that you'd like to see a power play do. However, once again, they aren't able to score, and I feel like I've just said too many times now over these last couple of months that we see these occasional power plays that look very good outside of scoring. And eventually, it doesn't matter how good it looks if it doesn't score, and that's kind of, I think, where we're at this point. The Kraken do continue to press here late in the third, even after this decent, though once again, ultimately unsuccessful, 4th power play of the game. Morgan Geekie gets a couple of pretty good looks and a little sliver of 5-on-5 time that we get right before Gaudreau puts a puck over the boards for a delay of game and another Kraken power play to close this one out. And at this point, still down 2 goals with just a couple minutes left, Seattle also pulls Grubauer to get the 6-on-4 opportunity on the power play, but once they leave the offensive zone, they have a really hard time getting back into it and end up getting in their own way, tripping over themselves. The Flames get the puck and they pass it back and forth for a couple of assists before putting it into the empty net to give themselves the 4-1 lead, where the game does ultimately finish. So then, all in all with this game, looking at it from the big picture, since people seem to like the 3 stars or 3 Kraken stars after a game, I thought I might also try another new thing here and 3 takeaways from the game. Now, I'll be honest, getting 3 takeaways for the Kraken from this game is a little difficult. Takeaway number 1, Grubauer was good, but he needs to be better than the opposition more often than not, at least once we get to next season. So we need to see from Grubauer what Markstrom has been able to do for the Flames this year. Takeaway number 2 from this game, it might be a bit of a cop-out, but I would say officiating. It's something that the Kraken have really, over these last few games, come up on the bad end of the kind of questionable officiating in the last 3 or 4 games, really, I would say. Now, that's the kind of thing that's gonna happen from time to time over the course of a season, but it doesn't make it any less frustrating when it happens against your team. I guess the silver lining here is that while the Kraken have been facing some questionable officiating, it's only helped them get better draft odds. So, at least there's that. And as far as a third takeaway, again, I don't think this is going to be anything news-breaking. I mean, at this point in the season, there's not really that many new things happening. The third takeaway, though, is definitely the power play and the big issues the Kraken continue to have there. I guess if you want to have a little bit of positivity, you could say just special teams as a whole. 2 very different sides of the same coin, where the Kraken penalty kill, after having a pretty tough February and most of March, over these last few weeks has really made just massive improvements. Again, all those shorthanded goals and doing their job at stopping goals going against them more often than not. Meanwhile, the power play, yeah, I don't know what else to say about it other than it's just straight up bad. Sure, as Hackstall pointed after the game, they did move the puck around really well, and they were able to consistently get the puck into the offensive zone and hold it there against a team that has done very good over the course of this season at keeping the puck out of their offensive zone and really making it hard for teams to enter the offensive zone on the power play. It's a good penalty killing team in the Flames that the Kraken were at least able to create chances against. But at this point in the season, after all the struggles the Kraken have continued to have against every team in the league, just creating chances against a team that's good on the penalty kill isn't good enough at this point. Finally then, as far as the Kraken 3 stars of the game are concerned, both Morgan Geekie and Carson Kuhlman had very good games offensively for the Kraken, but both of them had pretty tough games on the defensive end. Now, Kuhlman still put one in the back of the net, and the only one for the Kraken, so I'll give him the first star because, what the heck, why not? And for Geeky, I'll probably just end up giving him an honorable mention for this one, because there are a couple of other Kraken players that I think are worth mentioning. One of them I've already talked about a bit in Philip Grubauer, who, even though he was outplayed by Markstrom at the other end of the ice, considering the issues defensively in front of him that did lead to at least 2 of those goals, and the fact that he had a couple of pretty big saves for the Kraken and really didn't let in a soft one, I would say. Maybe outside of the third one, he probably could have stopped, but I wouldn't say it was necessarily a soft goal. Either way, I thought he had a good enough game from the Kraken to at least give them a chance to win this one if they had played better defensively in front of him. And for the third star, I could go with Jared McCann, who did have an equal to team high 3 shots on goal in this game, and also had the secondary assist on the Kuhlman goal. But I'm going to go a little bit more off the board and go with Jonas Donskoy, getting the third star, at least for the Kraken in this game, who, although he doesn't get onto the scoring sheet and only has 2 shots off on goal, I thought had probably the best all-around game for the Kraken in this one, really not having any standout bad moments, and was constantly around the puck both offensively and defensively for the Kraken. A large part of that is because how much of the time they spent on the penalty kill, which Donskoy has always been a part of. He was a play driver for the Kraken, even if not a lot of those plays ended up in the back of the net. Though, I suppose also in that regard, none of the plays he was involved in ended up in the back of the Kraken net either, so considering how this game went defensively for the Kraken, that's something to be worth mentioning. But with that, I think it will just about do it for this one, so as always, let me know what you thought of this game down in the comment section below. Hopefully I'll see you for the stream of the next Flames game here in a couple of days on Tuesday in Calgary. And as always, if you have made it to this point, thank you very much for watching. If you did like or enjoy this video, there are buttons for that kind of stuff down below that help support the channel. Be good to each other, God bless, and go Kraken.